Happy Monday, YouTube. Before we get into it, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already, tap that little bell so you get notified every time we go live. We're recapping the weekend's action up next. Well, hello there. Welcome in to Fantasy Baseball today on Monday, August 8th. Frank Stampfl joined by Scott White. Today on the show, we have a bunch of waiver wire options, the drop-o-meter. When I add players, we got to drop players too. Jacob deGrom was otherworldly on Sunday, so we'll talk about that outing and I guess what we should do with him rest of season, assuming your trade deadline hasn't passed. And of course, we'll get into much more. But let's jump in.
Oh my goodness gracious!
All right, Scotty. Well, hello there, Scott. How are you doing?
I'm fine.
That's
I'm
good.
pretty good.
Kind of a rough weekend for our teams, right? We were talking beforehand.
Yeah.
Your Bravos, my Yankees, not looking too great right now, but
No. Yeah, the Mets certainly look like the real deal in the NL East. I was kind of optimistic about the Braves' chances of passing them at some point, just because I've seen this story play out this way so many times before. But when you get deGrom and Scherzer in the same rotation, yeah, it kind of looks like game over at this point. They're up 6.5 games now after taking 4 of 5. You know, they're still close to 2 months to be played, so things can change. But given the current makeup of the Mets roster, they look pretty formidable. That's for sure. Not Dodgers formidable, who I believe are 35-5 in their past 40 games.
Insane.
But yeah, I don't know how anybody's going to beat them, but we've said that before, and they've been beaten. So, yeah, so there are some dominant teams out there. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's shaping up for a fun finish for sure heading into the postseason, but we've got time before that comes up. All right, oh my goodness gracious, from the weekend's action, Scott, where would you like to start?
I would like to go off the beaten path here with somebody who's only 8% rostered and a hitter. And that hitter is named Paul DeJong of the St. Louis Cardinals. Another pretty good team, those Cardinals. And they may be better now that Paul DeJong is back in the fold, which may seem surprising to say, given how awful he was at the start of the season. The fact he's only 8% rostered again. But in 8 games since returning, he has homered 3 times. He has doubled 3 times. He has 6 walks versus 9 strikeouts, again in 8 games. And he also, in the minor leagues, in AAA, where he spent so much of this season trying to rediscover his form, he homered 6 times in his final 9 games before returning. So you combine majors and minors, Paul DeJong in his last 17 games has 9 home runs. Clearly very hot right now. And yeah, I tried to look into maybe what he changed, get kind of an explanation, get some reassurance that what we're seeing now is legitimate improvement and not just some heater that he's on. And I didn't find much concrete information. Paul DeJong's basically just says his confidence has been restored, and now when he's up in a big situation, he's not dreading being up in a big situation. He's confident that he's going to come through. His manager says, you know, he's going with pitches now instead of trying to pull everything. These are typical things you hear about players who are no longer struggling. So I don't have anything concrete for you, but Paul DeJong was obviously a fantasy asset in the not too distant past and is hot enough right now as a middle infielder that I think he's worth looking into again. And in leagues deep enough that they have that extra middle infield spot, that it might actually be a struggle to fill for you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, especially in those deeper 15-team leagues, middle infield spot, if you need power, it seems like that's going to be the obvious skill that Paul DeJong provides. It's funny that you bring up his confidence in big situations, because this weekend that was so evident, right? On Friday, it was he's got 2 runners on base facing Clay Holmes in the 8th inning. He hits a 2-run double, a go-ahead double there for the Cardinals at the time, and then
that was the exact situation he was referring to.
And then a 3-run homer here on Sunday, which actually wound up, being the difference in the game because DJ LeMahieu hit a home run in the ninth inning that would have tied it if it wasn't for DeJong hitting that 3-run home run the inning before. So it's funny that you bring that up. Yeah, definitely does look confident early on here in his return. He's got 6 games this week, including 3 games in Coors Field. So specifically for this week's matchups, you love to get those games in Colorado. A couple other deep league middle infielders have emerged here, Scott. Luis Rengifo. His last 38 games now, he's batting .327, 3 homers with 4 steals. He's 18% rostered. Nick Gordon with the Minnesota Twins, he is hot. His last 6 games, he's got 10 hits, 1 homer, 2 steals. He's playing more consistently now with the Twins. They've had a lot of injuries. And kind of interesting from like a power speed perspective, just looking at his StatCast profile. This is Nick Gordon, 92nd percentile hard hit rate, 72nd percentile in sprint speed. And he's got 3 different position eligibilities. Jose Barrero hit 2 home runs this weekend, a double dong on Saturday. So there's a lot of names emerging here. Scott, do you like Paul DeJong more than the other ones I mentioned?
Yes, I like Paul DeJong the best of that group. I did put in some of those 15-team roto leagues I'm in some low dollar bids on Nick Gordon. The data, as you point out, is pretty interesting. I believe it was pretty interesting last year too. But he actually does have a considerable number of at-bats already, 232 at-bats entering Sunday. 5 home runs, 5 steals. So, maybe like a 10-10 pace, 12-12 pace if he was a full-time player. Not crazy production. Maybe he could be kind of a Gene Segura light. By the way, Gene Segura himself is back, had a big game on Sunday. And he's only 64% rostered. So he would trump all of these guys if you're looking for a middle infielder. But I would say Paul DeJong, of the 3 you mentioned here, I would rank them DeJong, Nick Gordon, and then Luis Rengifo third.
Okay. And Jose Barrero, I threw him in that mix too, Scott. He would be behind all those names.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, he did have the 2-homer game. One of the home runs was hit less than 100 miles per hour, which isn't particularly impressive. But the main hang up with Jose Barrero for me, in spite of his high prospect standing, he was terrible in the minors this year. I mean, awful. 209 with a 649 OPS, 37.6% strikeout rate against minor league pitchers. Really bad. So I'll need to see more than just an isolated 2-homer game from him. He followed it up with a 3 strikeout performance Sunday, and that's that's closer to what Barrero's been doing all season.
I agree with you wholeheartedly with Gene Segura as well. He is 68% rostered on CBS. That has to be close to must roster, like 100%, because I have to imagine somebody out there needs a second baseman or a middle infielder in their league. And he was really, really good earlier in the season. The Phillies offense is really kind of clicking right now, and that's without Bryce Harper. So once they get Bryce Harper back, hopefully for September, the stretch run, this offense will be even better. Gene Segura back inside my top 15 ranked second baseman. So again, I do think he is a must add where available. Let's move over to some waiver wire pitchers here, Scott. Oh my goodness gracious, for me, Edward Cabrera, who made his return on Friday, and he was going up against the Chicago Cubs. He tossed 5 no-hit innings in his return. He had 8 strikeouts to 3 walks, 17 swinging strikes on 78 pitches. Got him on all different kind of pitches here. 5 on the slider, 5 on the curve, 4 on the changeup, 3 on the fastball. We know he throws the ball very hard. He can generate these whiffs, 14.8% swinging strike rate through the 4 starts he's made this season. Obviously, it's a pretty small sample size. Does struggle with control. There's no doubt about that. 5.2 walks per 9. He's 50% rostered, pretty widely available at the Phillies this week. Don't necessarily love the matchup, Scott, but what did you see from Edward Cabrera on Friday, and do you think he is a must-add where available?
Well, 2 big things stood out for me with Cabrera. You mentioned one, that he got at least 3 swinging strikes on 4 different pitches. You don't see that a lot. Usually it's 1, maybe 2 pitches that are responsible for the bulk of the swinging strikes. Also, he allowed no hits in 5 innings. Remember his first 2 starts after he got called up, he allowed 3 hits in 12 innings. Then he had 1 start where he gave up like 7 hits. But there's this start with 0. Those are his first 2 with a combined 3. Also, on his 3 rehab starts before getting called up, Edward Cabrera allowed 1 hit combined in 12 innings. So, if you remove that 7-hit start from the equation, he's been pretty close to unhittable everywhere he's pitched, which is pretty interesting. So, yeah, I would say at this point, I know I've been kind of lukewarm on him when he's come up before. Of course, he's missed a lot of time with injury this year. So it's been a while since we've really needed to analyze him. But I think I'm back on board with Edward Cabrera being one of the biggest pitcher pickups from this weekend. If not the biggest, I'm just not sure about the roster rate of some of the other guys who would be in that discussion. Like I don't know what Reed Detmers is up to in terms of roster rate.
Yeah, he was the next one I was about to mention. Detmers, I have at 70%, but maybe
that's still pretty low.
Yeah, 70%. So still available there, Scott. Let's compare. These are the 4 that really stood out to me most. Detmers has now allowed 2 earned runs or fewer in 5 straight starts. He was at the Mariners, 7 innings, 1 run, 7 strikeouts, 17 swinging strikes in this start. He is, as I mentioned, 70% rostered. George Kirby, his first quality start since July 2nd. He was up against the Angels. 6 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts to 0 walks. He had 14 swinging strikes. 68% rostered is George Kirby. And then Kyle Gibson, Scott, I believe you have as a sleeper pitcher this week. He's got a great matchup going up against the Marlins once again. He went 8 innings, 1 run, 4 strikeouts against those very Marlins. Overall numbers for him are not great, but we obviously do like that matchup. So how do you rank those 4? Edward Cabrera, George Kirby, Reed Detmers, Kyle Gibson.
I go Detmers number 1. I think I'm still going to go Kirby number 2, but I saw when I was looking, reconfiguring the 2-star pitchers for next week, which I do every Sunday, it seemed like there were a couple sources that seemed skeptical Kirby was going to make a start at all this week. I haven't seen anything official saying they're going to skip him, but he threw only 4 innings in his previous start, even though he was pitching well. So there's some innings chicanery going on with Kirby, understandably, and that could complicate his situation. So, yeah, Detmers 1, Kirby 2. That's a close call with Cabrera 3. And then Gibson 4, who I don't think has the upside of the others. I think he's a fine matchups type because he generally pitches deep into games. I do want to mention the numbers for Detmers because it's getting to be all the more impressive every time out. So in 5 starts since returning, a 1.16 ERA, a 0.94 whip, 11 strikeouts per 9 innings, 14% swinging strike rate. He's clearly a different guy with this slider that he figured out how to throw again in the minors, got the velocity up on it. And in fact, he increased the usage of it in this most recent start at Seattle on Saturday. Detmers threw his slider 41% of the time. For the year, I think it's a little less than 25% of the time, 41% in this start. And it's been going up since he returned. He's clearly has a lot of confidence in it, and he should.
Yeah, actually was a season high 41% usage on the slider for Detmers this weekend. He's now ranked inside of the top 60 starting pitchers for each of Scott, Chris, and myself, and rightfully so. Detmers has been amazing, as Scott highlighted. I think I would take Cabrera over George Kirby. I think just talent-wise, they're probably very similar in terms of upside. I don't really know like how the Mariners are going to use Kirby moving forward. It's kind of weird, but yeah, I think I'll take Cabrera just because of that, but it is close between those two for me. I do want to mention, we've got to get to him early on here. Jacob deGrom, Scott, about as dominant as you'll see him. Like the guy has not missed a beat.
I didn't want to talk about it, Frank.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, should we just skip it then? Or?
No, it's fine.
He took a perfect game into the 6th inning up against your Atlanta Braves. 5 2/3, 1 hit, 2 runs allowed, 1 walk, 12 strikeouts, 25 swinging strikes on 76 pitches. That is a 33% swinging strike rate. League average is like 10%. 33% swinging strike rate for Jacob deGrom in this start. It's just bananas. 18 of those whiffs on the sliders, 7 on the fastball. His slider velocity was up nearly 2 miles per hour in the start, which, frankly, Scott, I don't really want to see velo being up for Jacob deGrom, but whatever. Yeah. As long as he makes it through the start healthy, I guess we can't really complain all that much. seeing a start like this, Scott, it just kind of reminds you of maybe why you shouldn't try and move Jacob deGrom if your trade deadline hasn't passed. But the other side of that is he's coming off an incredibly dominant start, and you probably could get a top 15-ish pitcher for him.
Maybe even more. I mean, and that's I mean, it always comes down to what you could actually get. Like it's easy for us to sit here and theorize and imagine a best case scenario. And maybe everybody in your league is as leery of deGrom's chances of staying healthy. It would make sense that they would be. But it's a major concern for deGrom. It's also the only concern. Like, clearly he's going to be deGrom. He's going to be the most dominant pitcher in baseball for however long he is healthy. And yeah, I agree. I'd rather not see him throw so hard, because he didn't always throw this hard, and he was still the best pitcher in baseball. He doesn't need to do it this hard, and I feel like it just increases the risk of injury, him constantly ramping up the velocity. Seemingly every year it gets to where he's throwing harder, but he is, if he does stay healthy, whether he's on your team or somebody else, like he's going to be he's going to help that team a lot. So, I could certainly understand just, okay, I've already done well without him. Now I got him just for stashing him all this time. And he could be the single player who puts you over the top if you just stick with him and keep your fingers crossed that he's able to finish out the 2 months without incident. But, on the other hand, you were doing fine without him. You stashed him all this time. You have him now for free, basically. You could turn that free asset into another really good asset, or maybe two, and let somebody else take on the injury risk. And I think either one of those approaches could be the reason you win the league. If it were me, I'd at least explore the safer route, but I'd want to be overwhelmed, because in theory, I'm giving up what may be the best fantasy asset for the rest of the season, Mm-hmm. So I'm not so anxious to move deGrom that I'm going to be willing to be less than thrilled with my return, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
So you have him ranked as your SP21. And I will admit, at least for me, ranking Jacob deGrom is incredibly tough, because you have to weigh how amazing he is when he's on the field versus his injury risk. But let's say you can get someone who clearly is not nearly as good on a per inning basis, like a Max Fried or even a Joe Musgrove who's slowed up recently. Would you do that 1-for-1 if you can turn deGrom into one of those guys?
Probably not. And I know that seems inconsistent with the rankings. But what I was trying to lay out there is that even knowing the risks with deGrom, the benefit being what it is, I might be willing to take a bigger gamble than I would with another injury. Like, let's say this was Clayton Kershaw and he wasn't already on the IL and he's pitching well. I'm not going to be as protective of that asset as I am of deGrom right now. So, I'm willing to take a bigger risk with him for the potential huge payoff. And I'd want to be overwhelmed. Like I said, it would take like a Max Fried, and it would take like a big bat as well. I'm always bad at coming up with an example on the spot, but I don't know. It would take like, let me look at an outfielder here. It would take like,
what if you can get Max Fried and JD Martinez, right? Like a top 25 outfielder.
Well, I have concerns about JD Martinez specifically, but let's say Brian Reynolds or Teoscar Hernandez along with a pitcher. Let's say someone even a little higher in, like Kyle Schwarber. I think that's possible, particularly if you're in the shallower the league is, it's possible. Yeah. And I'd be tempted at that point to do it.
I think Eloy Jimenez too, Scott. I mean, I know I've mentioned trying to buy him right now, and he looks really good since returning. So maybe Eloy and another, top 15 or top 20 pitcher if your trade deadline hasn't passed. But there's huge name value, obviously, with Jacob deGrom. So I agree. Like, if you're going to shop him, just try and maximize your return if you are going to do that. Let's stick with the pitchers and get back over to the waiver wire. These were waiver wire pitchers part 2. And we have Graham Ashcraft, 2 strong starts in a row. He was at the Brewers here this weekend, 5 2/3, 1 run, 3 strikeouts. I did notice his velocity was down pretty much across the board in this start, but it did not affect his production in this one. He's going up against the Cubs this week, so that's a pretty good matchup. Justin Steele tied a career high with 10 strikeouts up against the Marlins, and he's 24% rostered. Good matchup against the Nationals this week. Mitch Keller makes it 5 straight quality starts. He was at the Orioles, 6 innings, 1 run, only 1 strikeout, and he is at the Diamondbacks this week. Last 12 starts for Mitch Keller, 3.16 ERA, 1.33 WHIP is pretty high. But getting a ton of ground balls right now, 51%. Dane Dunning, back-to-back quality starts. He was up against the White Sox, 7 shutout innings, just 1 hit, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts. His velocity up across the board for Dane Dunning. Not that he throws particularly hard, but I thought it was interesting to see. He is 17% rostered up against the Mariners this week. Scott, any interest in Dunning, Mitch Keller, Justin Steele, Graham Ashcraft?
I think Dunning's velocity was up at his previous start too, though not quite as much. So he's been emphasizing his slider more. I want to say recently, and that's his best swing and miss pitch. So I think Dunning might be making some changes that are going to help maximize his arsenal. Somebody to keep an eye on. I'm not saying I'm not interested in picking him up yet. Of these 4, my favorite is still Ashcraft. And I'm not saying he's must roster or anything. I just think I see the most room for improvement there. I think he has the best chance of emerging as a real standout in fantasy, while the others I don't think have much of a chance of that, really. Keller, yeah, he's been putting together quality starts lately. He's completely abandoned strikeouts to do it, though. Kind of just leaning into this new sinker that he's developed and getting ground balls with that. And that's usually not a recipe for fantasy greatness. They all have good matchups this week. So you could consider any of them as streamers, but I think Ashcraft is still my favorite.
All right. Waiver wire pitchers part 3. These are going to be relevant in even deeper leagues than the previous group, but Matt Manning tied a career high with 7 strikeouts against Tampa Bay. He went 7 shutout. 4 hits, 3 walks, had those 7 strikeouts, 13 swinging strikes. He's 18% rostered. Brad Keller bounced back with a strong start against the Red Sox. 6 innings, 1 run, 4 strikeouts there. Dean Kramer posted a quality start against the Pirates, 6 1/3 shutout with only 2 strikeouts. And German Marquez, I know it's tough to trust Marquez, especially any Rockies pitcher. He does have a quality start in 4 of his last 5 outings, and during that time, he's got a 3.13 ERA, 107 WHIP. And his fastball velocity was way up in the start, nearly 2 miles per hour, averaged 97 with the pitch. So he is 36% rostered. Home start against the Cardinals. There's no way I'm using him, but kind of interesting right now. Scott, what do you think? Matt Manning, Brad Keller, Dean Kramer, and German Marquez.
Well, I mean, Marquez has the best chance of developing into a fantasy asset. Again, of course, we've seen him be that in the past, but I agree. I'm not ready to give him another shot just yet on my teams. The Matt Manning start was interesting because, of course, he was a big prospect heading into last year and was a big strikeout guy in the minors. And we haven't really seen any indication that he could be that in the majors. This start was the closest he's come. He got the 7 strikeouts in 7 innings. He got 13 swinging strikes, which was a career high and a decent number. I didn't really see anything that would indicate it's something's changed for him in terms of the arsenal or the way the pitches move or whatever. I think it was kind of a fluky thing, but if Manning starts doing more of this, he could become interesting again.
All right, the last group that I have here, these are reserved for the deepest leagues. I mean, they're all less than 10% rostered. Drew Smyly had his best start of the season, 6 2/3 shutout with 4 strikeouts against the Marlins. Garrett Hill, a starting pitcher with the Tigers, had a strong start against Tampa Bay, 5 2/3, 1 run, 6 strikeouts there, 15 swinging strikes. Thought that was impressive. And his minor league numbers this season, Garrett Hill, pretty good. 3.23 ERA, 108 WHIP, well over a strikeout per inning, 98 strikeouts over 69 and 2/3. And then Glenn Otto had one of his best starts of the season against the White Sox. 6 innings, 2 runs, 7 strikeouts to just 1 walk. His slider velocity was up 1 mile per hour in this start, and he threw that slider a season high 44%. He's at the Astros this week, so you don't want to use him, but kind of interesting. Scott, what do you think? Drew Smiley, Garrett Hill, Glenn Otto, the deepest of leagues.
I mean, I'd have a difficult time using them, maybe in a points league scenario where you need the volume. Otto, if he throws his slider more as he did in this start, he could become maybe a little more reliable than he's been, but I'm not ready to act on it yet. It would have to be a really deep league and probably a points league format. Otherwise, you're better off starting a reliever.
All right, let's move over to some of the waiver wire hitters who emerged this weekend. MJ Melendez is getting hot. His last 4 games, he's got 6 hits, including 3 home runs. He's 70% rostered, could be out there in some one-catcher leagues. He's got 7 home games this week. Scott, how do you rank MJ Melendez, Carson Kelly, Jose Trevino?
You just did.
Ooh, alrighty. Yeah, I mean, I would say those are probably the 3 best performing catchers who could be available right now. Carson Kelly has been awesome over the past month, and Trevino has been solid as well. But I agree. MJ Melendez coming around there, the prospect pedigree, and hopefully the Royals lineup in general can kind of keep it going here. Salvador Perez getting hot as well. Tommy Pham went 2 for 5 with his 12th home run on Sunday, and he's now moved up to the leadoff spot for the Red Sox with Jarren Duran dropping down in the lineup. He's 60% roster. Tommy Pham is 6 home games this week. Scott, are you a little bit more interested to add Tommy Pham now that he's leading off for the team?
I mean, potentially. That's obviously a positive development for his value. This was his first home run, the one he hit Sunday. It was his first home run since June. Ooh. So he had been pretty useless for weeks and weeks. But, I think in 5 outfielder leagues, him being already 60% rostered, maybe he's already picked up in all the 5 outfielder leagues. But if he isn't in yours, then yeah, you should look into Tommy Pham. By the way, I was curious how the Royal, because I saw MJ Melendez had this big performance this weekend, as you pointed out. And I was curious how the Royals, with Salvador Perez back, with Nick Pratto and Vinny Pasquantino up, how they were managing to fit everybody in the lineup. And they basically made MJ Melendez a full-time outfielder and backup catcher for Salvador Perez, while Pasquantino plays mostly DH and Prado plays mostly first base. So they found a way to get them all in. It wasn't, I was thinking Prado, if anyone was going to move to the outfield, maybe him, but it looks like Melendez has been there instead. And that's a good thing for his fantasy value too, because that means he'll probably play more regularly than the average catcher. And I feel like Melendez has been underappreciated all year. I mean,
the batting
average is good.
The batting average has been underwhelming, Scott, but just in general,
yeah.
Right. I
mean, it's picked up with this hot streak, but yeah.
He has been a productive player as a catcher eligible player in fantasy. Not that I'd want to use him in my outfield, but I don't think anyone's really using him there anyway, right? No. Like, you're most likely using him as a catcher, or at least you should be. Luke Voit had multiple hits in 3 of his last 4 games since coming over to the Nationals. He hit a home run off of Ranger Suarez on Saturday. He's 51% rostered. I know we spoke about Voit last week, Scott. Did this big weekend change your mind on him?
No, I mean, he got hot, and he's still capable of doing that, but I don't think Luke Voit is going to, I mean, he's certainly not having the year I hoped he would coming into it. And I don't think a switch is going to flip here and he's going to turn into the must start first baseman I hoped he'd be with the Padres, especially with that lack of supporting cast with the Nationals.
Yeah, for sure. A couple deeper corner infielders who could be available. Well, are definitely available. Rockies prospect Elihuris Montero had 6 hits this weekend, including a home run, and he was having a big season in the minors. 310 batting average, 15 home runs, 933 OPS. I did have some claims in here Sunday night, Scott, for Montero in those deeper, 15 team leagues because 6 home games in Colorado, prospect pedigree. I'm pretty interested there. Derek Hall, 3 more homers this weekend, including a double dong on Sunday. He's batting .282 with 8 home runs in 29 games. Hits the ball hard, puts it in the air. Exactly what you want to see from a power hitter, especially in Citizens Bank Park. They've got 6 games this week, only 1 left-hander on the schedule for Derek Hall, so that definitely favors him. And then Charles LeBlanc is a third baseman for the Marlins. He had 6 hits this weekend, including a steal on Sunday. Also had some interesting numbers in the minors this season, Scott. So what do you think about those 3 if you need a corner infielder? Montero, Derek Hall, and Charles LeBlanc.
Well, I was trying to see how Elahiris Montero got in the lineup, and it looks like he was just starting instead of Ryan McMahon. And I don't think, no, because McMahon did get a start at second base during that stretch. It just seems like the Rockies are prioritizing Montero over McMahon right now, which is fair. I mean, McMahon's been terrible this year. Pointed out last week that somehow he's still rostered in like 80% of CBS sports leagues. I don't know why.
No idea.
That's a weird one. So, I mean, look, anytime a Rockies hitter, any Rockies hitter who hasn't already invalidated his case, if he comes into regular bats for that team, he's somebody to keep an eye on in fantasy. And in Montero's case, we saw how productive he could be in the minors. So I'm definitely keeping an eye on him, and maybe should have put in some claims in those 15 team leagues like you did. Hall has shown good power, Derek Hall, with elite exit velocities, putting it in the air a lot, a good combination for hitting home runs, and that's what he's done. He's played virtually not at all against lefties. I think he has like 6 at-bats or something. They've been really careful about how they've used Derek Hall. And you mentioned it's mostly righties this week, but the Phillies do have the toughest matchups of any team. So I'm not particularly enthusiastic about using Derek Hall, even with all those righties on the schedule. And I'm not terribly enthusiastic about Charles LeBlanc either. So of those 3, I would say Elahiris Montero is the one who interests me the most. Derek Hall, if you're playing the matchups, you could think about using him.
Montero, by the way, looked into this weekend, Scott, to see where he was playing. It was first base on Sunday, DH on Saturday, third base on Friday. So they're kind of mixing it up. They're moving him around a little bit. I know Connor Joe has really lost out on playing time recently, which just absolutely breaks my heart. But yeah, he's being phased out, and it looks like maybe they're moving towards a youth movement with Montero there. If you need speed, we mentioned his name on Friday's podcast, but Rangers outfielder Bubba Thompson went 1 for 4 with 2 steals on Friday. He has started 4 straight games for them. He's 6% rostered. Again, deeper leagues, 5 outfielder leagues. You need speed. The name there, Bubba Thompson. Let's take a quick break, and we'll get to the news and notes here on Fantasy Baseball Today. The news and notes. Fernando Tatis began a rehab assignment on Saturday with AA. He went 0 for 2 with 2 walks. Padres manager Bob Melvin said they're targeting a mid-August return for Fernando Tatis. So maybe we're like 7 to 10 days away, something like that.
Yeah.
I feel like that could make sense.
We're not far from mid-August.
Yeah.
I might say 2 days from now is mid-August.
So. Yeah, let's get that.
I don't think he'll be activated in 2 days, but I'm just saying. Like, when does mid-August start? The 10th?
Makes sense to me.
The 10th through the 19th, that's mid-August.
I heard on the ESPN broadcast, too, that Tatis is going to play both center field and shortstop, so could have outfield and shortstop eligibility for next season again, too, which would be pretty awesome. So definitely we'll take that. Mike Trout took dry swings on Saturday and had no issues. He's dealing with that rare back condition and has been out since before the All-Star break. Obviously, the Angels aren't playing for much, but it sounds like Mike Trout does want to return this season. Alex Kirilloff is scheduled to undergo season-ending ulnar shortening surgery on his wrist Tuesday. That's like a tongue twister. That's a tough one there.
Ulnar shortening surgery. That's a bone, because I've always heard like ulnar nerve, but this is a bone that's being shortened in the hopes that it relieves the pain in the wrist, which has been ongoing pretty much from the time he first broke into the majors. And we don't have a lot of case studies on this. It's not It's not something we've seen a lot of. It sounds kind of like freaky. Like I think of Gattaca, that movie Gattaca, where they had like the leg lengthening surgery. This is shortening, not lengthening. It's kind of, I don't know. I hope it goes well for him because he has a lot of upside, and it would be sad for his career to never get off the ground because of this. But it seems like that they're expecting him to be ready for spring training, but we don't know exactly how this is going to go because we haven't seen a lot of instances of it.
Scott, I know that you will be very surprised to know that I never heard of the movie Gattaca, and obviously I've not seen it.
It's not a particularly well-known movie. Ethan Hawke, Jude Law, Uma Thurman, I think, is in it. 1997, I want to say.
Sounds like a pretty star-studded cast.
Yeah, I don't think it was a big box office success or anything. It was pretty good.
I got another movie take for later on in the podcast, but I'll save that for later because I don't want to bog us down. Hopefully I'll get to it. But Alex Kirilloff, as we mentioned, this is his second major procedure, and he's only 24 years old. So we'll see what happens. Hoping for the best. Tyler Stevenson isn't expected to return this season after undergoing surgery to stabilize his fractured right collarbone. Tim Anderson started his 2-game suspension on Sunday and will also miss one of the doubleheader games on Tuesday. Mitch Haniger, on Friday, they said maybe he's a week away, and then it turns out he was activated on Saturday, and he went 1 for 3 with a double and a walk in his return. D-backs apparently are going closer by committee moving forward. So, Scott, how are you handling this? Are you looking to add Ian Kennedy or Joe Mantiply in deeper category leagues as a result?
Oh yeah, Ian Kennedy. I was putting in some bids for him in those deeper roto leagues. Won him in one. Obviously, he's not near the priority of like Felix Bautista, who's still available in more than half of CBS Sports leagues. But I suspect Ian Kennedy's going to get the majority of the save chances going forward. It was interesting that they removed Melanson and then they went right back to him for a save Sunday when Kennedy presumably was unavailable because he'd pitched the previous 2 days.
Right.
But it was another shaky. Melanson came through with the save, but it was shaky. He allowed like 3 base runners.
Yeah.
And I don't see him reclaiming that role really. Could Joe Mantiply, who's a left-hander, factor? He could, but I think it'll be mostly Kennedy moving forward.
You know, I get that Joe Mantiply is a lefty, but he's far and away been their best reliever all season. So
yeah,
would be nice to see him get an opportunity, but again, lefty closers, we don't see it all that often. Personally, Scott, I was prioritizing Jonathan Hernandez, Rowan Wick, and Will Crow all ahead of Ian Kennedy in those deeper leagues on Sunday.
Will Crow, really?
Yeah. So he picked up a save earlier in the week with David Bednar unavailable, and then Bednar went on the IL, and then I think Will Crow pitched the 9th inning again the next day, although it wasn't a save opportunity.
I think I'd prioritize Jonathan Hernandez, but I might go Kennedy second of that group. Who else did you mention? Rowan Wick. Yeah, Wick. I'd rather have Kennedy than Wick because I just like Wick has like a 170 whip. I understand there's not a lot of competition there, but like he might be so bad that it doesn't matter.
I know he's been better recently. I think he's got like a 10 game scoreless streak or something like that. So,
but still, I mean, 170 whip in August.
Not great. Tyler Glasnow threw a bullpen session on Saturday and was deemed fully healthy, reaching 98 miles per hour with his fastball. However, he will not pitch in a game this season. He's 29% rostered. And look, if you play in a keeper league and maybe you're out of it or you just have a spot to stash somebody for next year, Tyler Glasnow, he's obviously someone you can add in that format. Trevor Rogers began a rehab assignment at AA on Sunday. Maybe the time off will get him back on track. I mean, can't really be much worse than how Trevor Rogers was pitching earlier in the year. Justin Turner is on track to return on Tuesday, which I would imagine means bad things for Miguel Vargas.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he started twice, right? And both times at DH.
Yeah. It's only been 2 times in 5 games, I think.
Yeah. They don't seem that invested in playing him. Now, it could change suddenly. Like if he goes out there one of those games and has 3 hits and one's a home run and he drives in 5 runs or whatever. Like maybe they start playing him all of a sudden. But I would say that rostering Miguel Vargas is not a very high priority right now. And if I was a betting man, I would bet on him being sent back to the minors before he becomes an everyday player in Los Angeles.
Travis d'Arnaud left Saturday's game with a leg injury, was seen wearing a protective walking boot on Sunday, and is not expected to return until Friday, which means if you have him, you should plan for a different catcher this week. Maybe even add William Contreras in Travis d'Arnaud's absence. Ian Anderson was optioned to AAA on Sunday, but is expected to return next weekend for their doubleheader. I believe it's against the Marlins, so that could be a good matchup for him. But
it could be, but he's also expected to be sent down. Like he's staying with the team now, going to be part of the taxi squad until that doubleheader start comes up, and then he's expected to be sent down to AAA legitimately to hopefully get on track, and hopefully he can, because I think the stuff is good. I noticed he threw the curveball a lot more in that great start against the Diamondbacks, and then went back to not throwing it that much against the Mets this weekend, and maybe he just needs more confidence in that third pitch. It doesn't seem like a bad pitch. I mean, it looks pretty when you see him throw it, but he needs more confidence in it to get the most out of that changeup that's been so devastating in the past.
Yeah, and Scott, I thought his curveball was one of his. I thought it was like the curveball and changeup were his 2 best pitches coming up through the minors, right? So,
yeah. Well, I remember when he was drafted, the curveball was the main pitch they were hyping up. I think the changeup came along later, and I don't know if he just. I don't know what happened with the curveball, but I think that's the key to unlocking Ian Anderson's potential. What do I know, right? But the Braves obviously figured out how to get Kyle Wright right. So I think they could, I have like if we're talking a dynasty scenario, maybe don't be so quick to jettison Anderson, because I do think he has a future. But yeah, he needs to spend some time figuring things out.
Aaron Savali is scheduled to return and start Wednesday against the Tigers. He's 33% rostered. Scott, do you have any interest in Savali?
Almost none.
All right. Franmil Reyes was officially designated for assignment by the Guardians on Saturday, which I know he's having a bad season. It just seems very sudden that Franmil Reyes is being DFA'd. So I would have to imagine he's going to latch on with some team, and I hope he does, because I think he can still play. Juan Yepez is starting a rehab assignment on Tuesday. Roansy Contreras recorded 9 strikeouts over 4 innings at AAA on Friday. He's 29% rostered, and he's looked very good. I think he's made like 4 rehab starts, Scott. Are you looking to re-add Roansy Contreras anywhere?
It'd have to be a league on the deeper side. I do think there's definite potential there. A lot of spin on all his pitches. Good swing and miss potential. But he pitches for the Pirates, and his previous stints have gone poorly. So, I wouldn't say it's a huge priority right now in fantasy to add him.
Rangers third base prospect Josh Young is also picking up starts at first base while rehabbing in the Arizona Complex League. And just a name to throw on your scout team for now. Josh Young, that's spelled Jung, because it would not surprise me if he does pick up some playing time here in September.
Yep.
Players who went to the IL this weekend: Clayton Kershaw with that lower back pain. He received an epidural injection on Friday. And Scott, I thought about adding Ryan Pepio into a few of those deeper leagues. He's 11% rostered. And then I remembered that Dustin May is going to be back soon. So I got rid of him.
Well, I mean, there's a chance he gets a spot start. I think there's a pretty good chance of that, especially since, Mitch White had kind of been their designated spot start guy, and he's in Toronto now. So maybe Pepio steps into that role. But yeah, sooner than later, it's going to be Dustin May rejoining the rotation. And, I don't think Kershaw is going to be out all that long either.
All right. George Springer went to the IL with right elbow inflammation. Hunter Green with a right shoulder strain, not expected to require surgery, thankfully, for Hunter Green. Starters sit these banged up players, Scott. Anthony Rizzo has missed 3 straight with lower back tightness, and it's something he's dealt with the past couple of years. But when he's played this year, he's still been really good. So what do you think about using him this week?
I'd try to play it safe with him. It depends what your alternative is at first base, how easily you could add another first baseman to your roster. But, unless, let's see, are they playing Monday, the Yankees? They are. So if we hear before the lineup lock, it'll be a later lineup lock. The first game's at 7-ish Eastern time. If we hear that he's in the lineup, obviously you start him. But otherwise, I think I'd try and play it safe with Rizzo.
Kyle Tucker has missed 4 straight with an illness. What do you think about him?
I'd probably start him.
Ronald Acuna was scratched Sunday with lower body soreness. He did have some big games here on Friday and Saturday. Are you leaving him in the lineup, Scott?
I am. That sounded like they just didn't want him playing on the wet grass. The game had a rain delay at the start. So I think Ronald Acuna is fine.
Julio Rodriguez is looking to return either on Wednesday or Friday, Scott. So that gives him half a week. I think we're probably sitting him for now, right?
Maybe not in a deeper rotisserie league, but in most formats, yeah.
All right, let's fire up the drop-o-meter. We talked about a bunch of players to add earlier. What about these players? Can you drop them? Let's start with Sean Manaea, who was at the Dodgers on Friday. He gave up 8 runs on 10 hits, 1 walk over 4 innings pitched. He did have 7 strikeouts. His fastball velocity was up, so a little bit of good, a lot of bad in the start once again. His last 9 starts, a 6.60 ERA, 1.69 whip for Sean Manaea. He's still 93% rostered, Scott. Where are you at on the drop-o-meter, 1 to 10 on him?
On Sean Manaea, I'm probably about a 6 or 7 on the drop-o-meter. Let's say 6. Certainly, like in a league where 250 players are rostered, I'd have no objections to dropping him if you're looking to get Reed Detmers on your roster, or maybe even like Jesus Luzardo, who we didn't talk about, but he had another good start over the week, and I'd be okay dumping Sean Manaea for either of them. But I do think better days are ahead for Manaea. I don't think he's a standout, but he's better than he's been lately. His ERA climbing. Gosh, what is it up to now? It's got to be close to 5 now.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere in the high 4s overall.
Yeah. Definitely, if you're not dropping him, you're sitting him until he gets right. But I do think he will get right.
Yeah. That overall ERA is up to 4.74 for Sean Manaea. He's going up against the Giants this week. They're 9th in weighted on base average against lefties. So definitely would bench Sean Manaea. Aaron Ashby, Scott, unfortunately, another clunker here against the Reds. 4 2/3, 4 runs allowed, 5 walks to 5 strikeouts, more of the same, struggling with control. And now 7 starts since returning from the forearm injury. A 4.45 ERA, 1.48 whip, 4.5 walks per 9. And oddly enough, the ground ball rates got way down during this stretch, only 41%. Earlier in the season, that was over 60%. I mean, that was that was one of Ashby's like standout skills. So
yeah, and last year too.
Yeah. So we've been talking about Aaron Ashby, but I'm just wondering, like, maybe we're overvaluing him. If you have him, what do you think about dropping him?
Well, I still think he's really talented and is going to have a good career as a starter. But yeah, he's had 2 great starts basically. And we feel both times we've reacted like, okay, this is the start of it. He's breaking out. And then he just doesn't follow it up with anything good. So drop-o-meter for Aaron Ashby is probably like an 8. I don't have confidence at this point that he's going to figure it out this year. He still could, but I don't think you need to cling to him as if he will.
Josiah Gray allowed 4 more home runs on Friday at the Phillies, and over his last 6 starts, it's real bad. 7.63 ERA, 1.57 whip, 13 home runs allowed in his last 6 starts. That is Josiah Gray. He is 76% rostered. He's at the Cubs this week. I actually think he was a sleeper pitcher for you, Scott. So
he is. Yep, he is. I moved him to 10th in the sleeper pitcher rankings after this most recent start. But yeah, 13 home runs in 6 starts is that's bad. It's hard to have any success when you're giving up that many home runs. And that's been the big problem for Josiah Gray, even dating back to last year. He's been at his best when he's featured his slider more. It doesn't get hit nearly as hard as his fastball. And it seems like during this rough stretch, he hasn't leaned on the slider as much as during his best stretches. And so I'd like to see that change for Josiah Gray. I think there's still hope for him going forward. But I'm being the 10th sleeper pitcher going into a week is not saying all that much, especially when you're 76% rostered. So, even acknowledging he's on my sleeper pitcher list for this week, where is he on the drop-o-meter? Probably up there with Ashby, like an 8.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd be totally fine dropping him for Detmers, Edward Cabrera, Kirby, and I guess if you need a start, you could drop him for Kyle Gibson too, but they're pretty similar to those two. Are we keeping the faith with Vinny Pasquantino, Scott? I don't know what's going on here. He's got a 227 batting average. He's got 3 homers. Plate discipline still looks good. The barrel rate and the expected numbers are starting to drop is something I've noticed for Vinny Pasquantino. Where is he on the drop-o-meter?
I'm keeping the faith in Vinny Pasquantino. I still think he is going to be great, be a great hitter. The data is still very impressive and beyond what you'd expect for a guy just breaking into the league, whether it's the plate discipline or the quality of contact. And it's going to end well for him. Is he undroppable? No, I mean, I just had to make a decision to drop him. Well, I don't know if the claim's going to go through, but I have a claim for somebody else. And in one of my shallower leagues, only about 250 players rostered. I can't afford to have a first baseman sitting on my bench in that league, no matter how good I think he is going to be. And I'm just hoping that I'll have another shot at him if he does start breaking out.
Mm.
So I will say on the drop-o-meter, Pasquantino, I'll go like 5 for him. I could understand dropping him just because, well, you can't have him in your lineup right now, and you may need the bench space for somebody else. But in the long run, I still have confidence in him.
The last one here is Nolan Jones, who has now sat 4 of the last 6 games for the Guardians. He's only 33% rostered. Scott, is he droppable? And I don't know, even the deepest.
Yeah, he's a 10 on the drop-o-meter. He was one of the first players when I queued up my waiver claims in those 15-team roto leagues. He was one of the first. That was getting waxed for me. not playing enough with Oscar Gonzalez back. I mean, it seems like he's taken all the playing time that Jones was getting before. And of course, Jones against lefties has been an automatic no-go for the Guardians.
Yeah. I mean, now he's even sitting against righties, so it's not going great for Nolan Jones. Starter sit these pitchers. They did something notable this weekend. Eric Lauer turned in a 7-inning quality start against the Reds, and he is going up against the Cardinals this week. He's been better recently, Scott. Eric Lauer has. The underlying numbers don't really support it, but what do you think about the Cardinals? They're really good against lefties.
Yeah, I would say probably lean towards sitting Lauer, even though he's been pretty effective. 2.62 ERA in his past 6 starts and more than a strikeout per inning, but the swinging strike rate's only 9% during that stretch. So I'd want a better matchup than the Cardinals for him.
Pablo Lopez was hit hard once again. He was at the Cubs, 5 innings, 9 hits, 4 runs allowed in this one, and he is going up against the Atlanta Braves this week. And, famously, he started against the Braves, I think, during the shortened season, Scott, and that was the game where they scored like 28 runs.
29.
29. Yep. I don't think that's going to happen again, but my confidence is wavering in Pablo Lopez. What do you think?
So I was looking through the game log, and he's had some okay starts in his last 15, but I would say in his last 15 starts, Pablo Lopez has only had 2 great starts that you'd really miss having him in your lineup for in 15, which, I mean, it goes to show you just how impressive he was prior to those 15 starts. I think he had an ERA around 1. But that's a long time to be that mediocre. I mean, the overall numbers during that 15 start stretch, 4.91 ERA, 1.35 whip, less than a strikeout per inning. All the usual indicators look good for Lopez, like high swinging strike rate. The XFIP is pretty good, but I'm at the point now where I think he's kind of with Sean Manaea for me, where I'd be more likely to drop Manaea than Lopez. I can't see myself dropping Lopez, but I think you got to sit him until he regains your trust. And I mean, I don't know how many good starts in a row that's going to take. Obviously, we're running out of time, but I wouldn't want to start him against the Braves. No.
Frankie Montas got rocked in his Yankees debut here at the Cardinals. 3 innings, 6 runs allowed, only 2 strikeouts. He had 3 walks in this start. He hadn't pitched since July 26th. He was away for a death in his family, and he was recently dealing with that shoulder injury as well. Montas is going up against the Red Sox this week. What do you think about starting him there?
That's probably fine. It was a rough start. The previous 2 coming back from the IL were pretty good. I think I'd stick with him for now.
Jesus Luzardo has now had 2 strong outings off of the IL. He was at the Cubs this weekend, 7 shutout, only 1 hit allowed, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts. Velocity was down about between 1 and 1.5 miles per hour on basically all of his pitches. So really don't like to see that, but he has been effective, Scott.
Yeah.
What do you think about using Luzardo against the Atlanta Braves this week?
Well, and like the 4-seamer, the fastball was down 1.6, but it was his 4th most used pitch, which is what we want to see from Luzardo. We want to see him use the off-speed stuff more, and he's having success doing that. Against the Braves, Luzardo is far from automatic against the Braves. I'd be more likely to start him than Pablo Lopez, but I wouldn't say I'm eager to start him.
Yeah, same. Lucas Giolito is the last one here. He had an okay start at the Rangers, 5 innings, 1 run, 5 strikeouts, and he is going up against the Tigers this week. So it's a really good matchup, but kind of getting these Jekyll and Hyde starts from Lucas Giolito.
Yeah, and even the Jekyll ones are like 5 innings. So
yeah.
I'd because the matchup is so good, you could think about starting Giolito. Otherwise, I'd call him an automatic sit. That's more where I'm at with him.
I think it's going to be harder to get him in there in 12-teamers, but in deeper league, I could see using Lucas Giolito this week. A couple other leftovers here. We'll start with some pitching standouts from the weekend. Dylan Cease, 4 straight quality starts. He was at the Rangers, 6 innings, 1 run, 5 strikeouts there. Tony Gonsolin gets back on track with a solid start against the Padres, 5 shutout with 6 strikeouts. Robbie Ray, a strong bounce back up against the Angels. He really just can't pitch against the Astros, which I don't blame him. They're really good. 7 innings, 1 run, 10 strikeouts for Robbie Ray. And then Max Scherzer now has 7 straight quality starts since returning from the IL. He was up against the Braves, 7 shutout, 11 strikeouts to 0 walks. His ERA is down to 1.98 for the season. Scott, anything you'd like to add on Scherzer, Ray, Gonsolin, Cease?
Gonsolin seems to be fading here a little bit as the innings pile up for him. And I would say at this point, he's less than automatic now, particularly if you're talking about a shallow league. 4 straight non-quality starts. ERA has gone from 162 to 230 for him. You know who else is fading? And let me check and see if you have him in the notes. Okay, you do. We'll get through him in a little bit.
All right.
It's Shane McClanahan. We'll get to him in a little bit.
Oh, gosh. Scotty, I mean, between Connor Joe and Shane McClanahan, my heart is breaking right now. But look, he's still been okay. We'll get to him. Pitching standouts part 2. Merrill Kelly now has 7 straight quality starts. He was up against the Rockies. 7 innings, 2 runs, 5 strikeouts there. Christian Javier was at the Guardians. 6 innings, 1 run, 4 strikeouts to 0 walks. Tristan McKenzie back on track with one of his best starts of the season against the Astros, no less. 8 shutout with 8 strikeouts in that one. And then Aaron Nola just keeps on with a quality start up against the Nationals. 6 innings, 1 run, 5 strikeouts there. Scott, anything notable on Kelly, Javier, McKenzie, and Aaron Nola?
Yeah, I think we should have a lot of confidence in McKenzie at this point. I know the xFIP is high because the fly ball rate is high. But he's shown he's just really hard to hit, and I think that makes up for it. Even those back-to-back starts where he allowed 4 earned runs prior to this start, I think he only gave up 1 home run between the 2, so it wasn't like that was sinking him. On paper, it looks like Tristan McKenzie would have the same problems Josiah Gray does, but he doesn't seem to. So I think he's pretty bankable.
McKenzie reminds me a lot of Jose Urquidy, Scott. He does get more strikeouts than Urquidy does, but they always routinely have good ERAs, good whips, but their xFIP is much higher because they are fly ball pitchers. But frankly, they've both been pretty effective. So that is Tristan McKenzie and Jose Urquidy. Pitching standouts, part 3. Kevin Gausman, back-to-back quality starts. He was at the Twins, 6 shutout with 5 strikeouts. Corbin Burns, back on track with a strong start against the Reds, 6 innings, 1 run, 9 strikeouts there. Logan Webb was at the A's, 7 innings, 2 runs, 5 strikeouts. And then Tyler Anderson does not care about your Padres additions because he mowed them all down on Sunday Night Baseball. 7 shutout, 2 hits, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts for Tyler Anderson. His ERA drops to 2.72. Anything here, Scott? Anderson, Webb, Burns, Gausman.
Yeah, not really. Anderson seems like he's overachieving because the strikeout rate is not very high, but then the swinging strike rate is high, so it seems like he's underachieving with the strikeout. He's been a difficult one to figure out, but he's having success, and he pitches for the team that's won 35 of their last 40 games, so I'm not going to nitpick too much.
All right, let's talk about Shane O'Mac. Here comes the money. No more. No, I'm just kidding. But he was cruising in this start through his first 6 innings and then came back out for the 7th against the Tigers, and it all kind of snowballed on him there. But the final line, 6 1/3, 6 hits, 4 runs, only 3 strikeouts to 0 walks. That's now 2 subpar outings in a row, Scott, for our guy Shane McClanahan.
Against the Tigers, Frank. He only managed 3 strikeouts against the Tigers.
Not great.
The fastball was down 1.6 miles per hour in his previous start. Also not good against the Guardians.
Mm-hmm.
It was down only 0.7 in this one, so it wasn't down as much. But he is now at his he's already set a career high in innings now, right? I believe that's the case. And you just wonder if maybe he's losing a little bit of steam because of that. I'm not saying you need to dump him. I'm not saying he's no longer a top 10 pitcher for me or anything like that, but just another reason why you might consider shopping him. Sort of the same rules apply as for deGrom, where you need to get like a really good return to justify the upside you're giving up, but you're pursuing it to protect yourself from the downside.
Mm-hmm. The problem, Scott, which I've run into in leagues where I have Shane McClanahan, is if you play against savvy fantasy owners, they know what you're doing. They see what's going on with Shane McClanahan and the innings and all of everything that you just mentioned. So I shopped him in a few places and couldn't really get a fair return for him.
That's why I often say we do all these like buy low, sell high conversations. I almost never do buy low, sell high trades, but that's because I play with people who know exactly what I'm doing. I suspect the majority of listeners don't. Could be wrong about that.
Right.
But I suspect there are a lot of people playing out there who don't have the same aren't used to the same level of competition we are.
Some hitting leftovers from the weekend. Rhys Hoskins has homered in 4 straight, which brings him to 24 home runs total. JT Realmuto getting the power back on track. He has 4 homers in his last 10 games, now up to 12 homers and 13 steals total for him. Trey Mancini had a double dong on Friday, including a grand slam, and it wasn't even in Houston. It came in Cleveland, so love to see that. You don't expect this often, but Rowdy Tellez had a sock and a shoe on Friday, his 22nd home run, first steal of the season, obviously. Nolan Arenado is on fire once again, post All-Star break, 12 games. He's batting .356 with 4 homers and an OPS approaching 1,200 during that time. Francisco Lindor, same thing for him, post All-Star break, 16 games. He's batting .400 with 3 homers and an 1104 OPS. Dalton Varsho getting back on track as well. He had 2 homers this weekend and 3 in his last 6 games.
I do want to mention for Trey Mancini, because remember we were worried about the playing time since it didn't seem like they wanted to use him in the outfield much, if at all. He was playing consistently this weekend. I think he started once for Yuli Gurriel at first base, the other 2 at DH, with Yordan Alvarez playing left field. So the Astros like Alvarez in the outfield more than they like Mancini in the outfield. I don't know if that's the best thing for Alvarez's fantasy value, but it does seem like good news for Mancini that they're willing to move Alvarez out there for him.
The call to the bullpen. Let's start with the Orioles on Friday. Felix Bautista struck out 2 for his 4th save. He is 47% rostered if you need a closer. In Tampa Bay on Friday, Colin Poche picked up his 7th save. Jason Adam pitched in the 8th inning of that game. For the Twins on Friday, Jorge Lopez entered with a 1-run lead. He gave up 3 singles, and he blew the save in that one. I know he pitched the 9th inning for another game this weekend, so I don't think there's really anything to worry about there. For the Brewers on Friday, Devin Williams struck out the final 2 batters for his 7th save. And then on Sunday, he entered with the game tied in extra innings. He gave up 2 unearned runs and took his 2nd loss of the season. Wasn't really his fault. I saw there was a pretty bad error by Mike Brosseau behind Devin Williams. For the Yankees on Friday, Clay Holmes entered in the 8th inning with a 1-run lead to face the heart of the Cardinals order. He gave up a 2-run double to Paul DeJong, which we mentioned earlier. That is Clay Holmes' 2nd straight blown save and loss.
And I believe, well, you mentioned he was in the 8th inning. They had Chapman, who they were going to bring in for the 9th in that game. So it seems like maybe now Clay Holmes's grip on the job is a tenuous one right now. I'm not saying he's out as the closer. I'm just saying Chapman might start getting some save chances himself.
No, yeah, I definitely think that's possible. For the Mariners on Saturday, after working 3 games in a row, Paul Sewald was likely unavailable. That meant Eric Swanson picked up his 3rd save. He is 3% rostered. He's another name that I had some claims on in deeper leagues on Sunday night. Not ahead of the names we mentioned earlier, like Ian Kennedy and those, but if you're really desperate for saves, Eric Swanson has pitched very, very well for the Mariners this season. On Sunday, Paul Sewald was back at it for his 14th save. On Saturday for the Cardinals, Ryan Helsley was unavailable. Giovanni Gallegos struck out 2 for his 11th save. And then for the Reds on Sunday, Hunter Strickland gave up a game-tying solo homer in the 9th, and he has now allowed at least 1 run in 4 of his last 5 outings. He is Hunter Strickland, so that's going to happen. And then Ross Detweiler picked up the save in the 10th inning here on Sunday for the Reds. To stream or not to stream, let's start with Monday. Jordan Lyles versus the Blue Jays. Yusei Kikuchi at the Orioles. Keegan Thompson versus the Nationals. Jose Suarez at the A's. And Cole Irvin versus the Angels.
I like Cole Irvin the best. He's been money at home. He had a huge July. The Angels' offense is terrible. I think he's a pretty easy call. My second favorite is probably Yusei Kikuchi at Baltimore. Has looked better since coming off the IL, though the longest he's gone is 5 innings. But, maybe he'll be a little more built up now and go long enough for a win.
On Tuesday, we have Brady Singer up against the White Sox, Braxton Garrett at the Phillies, Marcus Stroman versus the Nationals, and James Kaprielian versus the Angels.
Well, they're all good choices, I think.
Oh.
I would rank them Stroman against the Nationals, Singer against the White Sox, Braxton Garrett at the Phillies. James Kaprielian at the Angels is a distant 4th, but that's a really favorable matchup, and he's been on a nice run. I don't think he has the upside to sustain it, but I think with this matchup, you could roll the dice with him.
Scott White optimism during To Stream or Not to Stream. This is just, we are breaking new ground here on Fantasy Baseball today. As for my movie take, I'm going to have to save it for tomorrow because we are up against it here. But
okay.
Look, we have a shorter slate of games on Monday, so I think we could fool around a little bit. But we're going to wrap there. For Scott, I am Frank. Thank you all for listening and watching Fantasy Baseball today. We'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.